right now, a line of code typed by a software developer out in Silicon Valley is like the direct reason a utility company thousands of miles away is drawing up plans for a new nuclear reactor.
Yeah, which is just wild to think about.
It really is. Today, we're looking at why this supposedly invisible, weightless digital cloud is suddenly demanding concrete, steel, and uranium at a scale we literally haven't seen in decades.
It's a huge shift.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're taking a really close look at a massive kind of hidden tug-of-war happening behind the scenes of our modern lives.
Right.
It's this collision between our boundless technological ambitions and the very hard physical limits of our planet.
And we're using a really fascinating stack of source material today.
Yeah, primarily a comprehensive news brief from the Daily Tech Reader, dated Friday, June 26, 2026.
It acts as this incredible diagnostic snapshot of the global system.
Globally.
You have this intersection of macroeconomic data, diplomatic back channels, and infrastructure development all happening simultaneously.
And our mission for you today is to decode how these seemingly disconnected events are actively reshaping the ground beneath your feet.
Exactly.
We're going to explore how global diplomacy is altering physical supply chains, why the AI boom is triggering a real-world energy crisis, and how humanity is balancing our drive to explore the stars with the environmental stressors fracturing our basic infrastructure.
There's a lot to cover.
So grab a mental notepad. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the global chessboard.
Right.
Because right now, words spoken quietly in closed-door negotiation rooms are fundamentally altering physical realities out on the ocean.
Yeah, the primary macro story dominating this briefing centers on the Middle East.
Okay.
Specifically, the deep ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and Iran.
Right, they've been at that for a bit.
They have. They're attempting to construct a long-term diplomatic framework, like a comprehensive agreement that actually stabilizes the region.
And the geopolitical mechanics there are crucial.
Or absolutely. Qatar is stepping in as the key intermediary here. They've positioned themselves really uniquely over the past few years. They possess the diplomatic architecture and really the regional trust to bridge that gap between Western interests and Tehran.
And we are already seeing the downstream physical effects of those conversations.
We are.
Like, look at the tentative agreement reached on May 31st, 2026. The one concerning the Strait of Hormuz.
That's a huge deal.
For anyone tracking global shipping, that strait is essentially the global economy's physical pressure valve. A massive percentage of the world's oil flows through it.
Exactly.
And the June 26 briefing confirms that this diplomatic effort is actually working. Shipping activity in the strait is stabilizing. But I have to push back a little. Is the market overestimating how quickly diplomatic agreements actually translate to long-term supply chain security?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the global financial markets translate that geopolitical stabilization into hard numbers.
Okay, how so?
In commodities trading, there's something called a risk premium. When a region like the Middle East is volatile, traders price in the possibility, the risk, basically, that a shipping lane might be blocked or a refinery might get damaged.
So they just bake that into the price.
Exactly. They add a premium to the cost of a barrel of oil just to hedge against that uncertainty.
Oh, okay.
But because Qatar's mediation and the U.S.-Iran negotiations are, easing those supply concerns, that risk premium is just evaporating.
Wow.
And as a result, oil prices are sitting near recent lows.
Wait, okay. If the risk premium is gone and oil is cheap, shouldn't we be seeing an immediate sense of relief in the broader economy?
You would think so, yeah.
Because cheaper fuel means cheaper shipping, which means cheaper goods on the shelves.
Right.
Yet the briefing notes that global markets are remaining incredibly cautious right now.
Yeah, they are.
It feels like a localized diplomatic win just isn't enough to calm the entire financial system.
And that cautiousness comes down to the mechanics of borrowing money. Cheaper oil definitely helps cool down the cost of goods, but energy is only one piece of the inflation puzzle.
Right. There's a lot more to it.
Exactly. The briefing highlights that recent inflation data is keeping the Federal Reserve on a very cautious footing, which means Treasury yields remain elevated.
Okay, let's break down Treasury yields for a second because it sounds like, Wall Street jargon. But it actually dictates the reality for average businesses.
It really does.
A Treasury yield is essentially the interest rate the U.S. government pays to borrow money.
Right.
And because the U.S. government is considered the safest borrower in the world, that yield sets the baseline for every other interest rate in the economy.
Precisely. So if the baseline Treasury yield is high, it means borrowing money is expensive across the board.
For everyone.
For everyone. So a logistics company looking to, say, finance a new fleet of trucks.
Or a manufacturer wanting to build a new facility.
Exactly. They face punishingly high interest rates on those corporate loans. So even though the fuel to run their operations is cheaper right now, thanks to the Strait of Hormuz stabilizing, the capital required to actually grow their business is still restricted.
That's a tough spot to be in.
It is. The Fed is watching a very complex domestic picture. They're weighing cheaper energy against sticky inflation in sectors like housing and services.
Right. And, geography and physical reality always demand their due, regardless of the macroeconomic theories.
Oh, for sure.
We see this physical friction literally carved into the earth. The briefing notes that border and immigration control continue to demand massive political attention and resources in the U.S.
Yeah, that's a huge ongoing issue.
And we're not taking any political sides here. We're just impartially reporting the facts from the source. But it's a stark example.
Right, absolutely.
On June 2, federal authorities discovered a 2,000-foot drug tunnel connecting Mexico to the U.S.
Wow. 2,000 feet.
Right. It is a very real subterranean reminder that geography and the movement of goods and people across physical boundaries, it requires constant physical intervention. You just can't digitize a border.
You really can't. And that reality, the inescapable physical footprint of our systems, that brings us directly to the defining technology trend of the year.
Okay, let's pivot to that.
We are seeing an unprecedented surge in artificial intelligence infrastructure spending.
Unprecedented.
Completely. The demand for AI hardware is essentially carrying the entire global semiconductor sector on its back right now.
Which means we really need a reality check on our own vocabulary here.
How so?
Well, we throw around the term the cloud all the time.
Yeah,
right?
constantly.
We stream movies from the cloud. Our workplace software lives in the cloud.
Right.
It sounds so ethereal, like it just floats harmlessly above us in the sky.
Like magic.
Exactly. But the cloud is actually thousands of acres of windowless concrete warehouses packed with high-performance processors.
Very physical.
Very physical. And those processors are running incredibly hot, demanding staggering amounts of electricity.
Massive amounts.
So my question for you is, are we just swapping our 20th century reliance on physical oil for a 21st century reliance on the power grids required to keep AI running?
That is a great question. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing a fundamental transition from a software-driven economy to a hardware-driven economy.
Okay.
Over the last, say, 20 years, the biggest tech booms were all about writing code and launching apps.
Right, the overhead was relatively low.
Exactly. You just needed some laptops and server space. But training and running these large language models, it requires massive physical infrastructure.
It's a totally different ballgame.
Completely. The hyperscalers, the tech giants providing these cloud services, they are accelerating data center construction globally.
And the constraint isn't the software anymore.
No, the constraint is no longer how fast you can write the code. The constraint is how much power you can pull from the local utility grid without causing a blackout.
Right. Because a facility the size of a shopping mall, filled with dense server racks, it doesn't just need power to run the calculations.
No.
It needs a massive amount of power and millions of gallons of water, by the way, just for the cooling systems.
Yeah.
Just to keep the microchips from literally melting.
And utilities are scrambling.
I bet.
They're having to revise their long-term power generation forecasts dramatically upward.
Wow.
Grid modernization projects and massive battery storage deployments are expanding rapidly just to handle the load.
But what are renewables?
Well, intermittent power sources like wind and solar, they're crucial, obviously.
Yeah.
But they can't always provide the massive 247 uninterrupted baseload power a data center requires.
Right.
You just cannot have a global AI infrastructure pause its operations simply because the wind stopped blowing.
Right. The AI can't just take the night off.
Right.
Which brings us to a really fascinating pivot mentioned in the brief.
Oh, yeah.
The revival of nuclear energy. Yeah. Nuclear policy is getting renewed attention, specifically because it provides that massive, carbon-free, always-on baseline power.
It really just comes down to the math of the situation.
The math.
Yeah. To feed the AI boom without completely missing our international carbon reduction targets, nuclear energy becomes one of the only viable engineering solutions.
Wow.
The technological demands of our future are basically forcing a reevaluation of a mid-20th century power source.
So the infrastructure footprint is massive.
Huge.
Let's look at what all this concrete, copper, and nuclear power is actually producing.
Good idea.
Because the integration of AI is seeping into every industry, but the societal and corporate friction is heating up right alongside those processors.
Definitely. On the utility side, AI is demonstrating immense value in complex, data-heavy fields.
Like what?
Well, in the pharmaceutical industry, for example, AI is materially shortening drug discovery timelines.
That's amazing.
It is. Instead of physically mixing chemical compounds in a lab for years just to see if they bind to a specific disease receptor, an AI model can accurately simulate millions of molecular interactions in a matter of days.
Days instead of years.
Exactly. It identifies the most promising candidates for physical trials almost immediately.
It's entirely changing the speed of innovation.
Yeah.
I mean, it is assisting doctors in analyzing medical diagnostics. Software developers are using AI coding assistants to write routine code.
Right, like a co-pilot.
Exactly, acting like a co-pilot that catches errors in real time. And we're also seeing the standardization of multimodal AI.
Right, the systems that can handle everything at once.
Yeah, systems that seamlessly process text, audio, and high-resolution images simultaneously. Even Hollywood and the music industry are jumping in.
Which is wild.
It is. Industries which traditionally rely on highly manual creative workflows, they are rapidly adapting to AI production tools.
But the honeymoon phase of simply marveling at what AI can do, that's kind of over. Enterprise customers, the corporations actually footing the bill for these enterprise AI licenses, they're pushing back hard.
Interesting. Why?
They're demanding predictable, usage-based pricing models.
Okay.
And more importantly, chief financial officers are demanding measurable return on investment.
Show me the money.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one thing to pay for an AI tool that invents a new blockbuster drug.
Sure.
It's an entirely different thing to pay millions for an AI license just so middle management can summarize email threads a little faster.
Yeah, the productivity gains have to actually outpace those massive infrastructure costs we just talked about.
Exactly.
And it's not just a financial friction. There's a persistent shortage of a cybersecurity talent right now.
Which is a big problem.
An incredibly concerning problem because AI-powered supply chain threats are becoming way more sophisticated. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
The friction isn't just corporate anymore. It is moving into the legal and regulatory sphere.
Right. The defining event here is the June 1st top story, where Florida became the first state to actually sue OpenAI over ChatGPT's safety failures.
Think about the paradox there for a second.
It's wild.
You have businesses and venture capitalists pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into AI because they see it as the ultimate engine for future economic growth.
Right.
Meanwhile, an entire state government is filing a lawsuit arguing that the very same technology is fundamentally unsafe for public interaction.
Yeah.
Are we watching innovation just outpace our ability to safely regulate it?
I think we are experiencing this really messy transition. We're moving from the move fast and break things era of Silicon Valley to the accountability and liability era of public utilities.
Right.
When an AI hallucinates, meaning it confidently outputs false information, it's a funny quirk if you're just asking it to write a poem.
Sure, no harm done.
But if a state agency or a medical provider relies on that model and it hallucinates legal or medical advice to a citizen,
Oh, wow.
that is a massive liability. That's why the briefing emphasizes the rising importance of AI governance platforms.
Governance platforms, meaning like an entirely separate layer of software designed purely to watch the AI.
Exactly.
Just to make sure it behaves, stays compliant, and doesn't leak secure data.
Right. It's essentially software policing software.
Wow.
And another major architectural shift happening in response to all this friction is the acceleration of edge computing.
Let's visualize how edge computing actually solves these problems. Because it's a huge departure from the centralized cloud we were just talking about.
Yeah, it really is. Think of the centralized cloud like a giant, brilliant brain located in one distant city.
Okay, got it.
Every time a smart sensor in a factory or an autonomous vehicle on the road needs to make a decision, it has to send that data all the way to that central brain.
Which takes time.
Right. It waits for it to process and waits for the answer to travel back.
Mm-hmm.
That creates latency, a delay, and it opens up security risks while the data is traveling.
Yep.
Edge computing takes a smaller, specialized piece of that AI brain and places it directly on the local device, right at the edge of the network.
So instead of a centralized brain processing every single impulse, you're giving the local nervous system enough intelligence to just, like, flinch on its own.
That's a great way to put it.
It processes the data locally, which cuts down on the immense bandwidth costs and keeps sensitive data from traveling across the open internet.
Exactly. It's a direct engineering response to the physical constraints of data transmission and the corporate demand for tighter security.
It is incredible how all of this connects.
It really is.
We are building these towering technological capabilities, AI that simulates molecular biology, edge networks making real-time autonomous decisions.
Yeah.
But as we look at the final section of this briefing, the contrast with our physical reality is just staggering.
It's quite a reality check.
While we construct this massive digital nervous system, the physical world supporting it is under severe, almost breaking point environmental stress.
The vulnerability is laid bare in the climate data.
Yeah.
The briefing details a severe European heat wave that is actively warping transportation infrastructure and disrupting daily life.
That's intense.
And simultaneously, severe weather patterns are shifting into the eastern United States, threatening logistics and power grids over the weekend.
Wow.
And zooming out globally, humanitarian agencies are raising major alarms about worsening food insecurity driven by these shifting climate patterns.
So what does this all mean?
Right.
Look at the sheer irony of the human condition presented in this single document.
It's pretty wild.
In the exact same news brief where we read about agriculture struggling against climate shifts, we also read that NASA is advancing preparations for future Artemis missions.
Yeah, going back to the moon.
Exactly. We are actively engineering the thermal shielding required for long-term lunar and Mars exploration.
Right.
SpaceX is completely dominating commercial orbital launches. Billions are flowing into fusion energy startups attempting to build miniature, contained suns on Earth.
It sounds like science fiction.
It does. Quantum computing milestones are being crossed. We are literally reaching for the stars, yet a sustained summer heat wave is still enough to melt the asphalt and cripple the basic trains and power grids we rely on today.
This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
How resilient is our ambition if the foundation is cracking?
Oof, good point.
Connect the environmental stress directly back to our conversation about AI data centers.
Okay.
We just discussed how artificial intelligence requires an unprecedented, massive expansion of the electrical grid.
Right, all those windowless concrete buildings.
Exactly. But what happens to the AI revolution when that exact same grid is buckling under the pressure of severe heat waves and extreme weather events?
It all stops.
Exactly. The infrastructure required to invent the future is actively threatened by the environment of the present.
We're basically building 21st century minds on top of 20th century concrete and wires,
Yeah.
while dealing with a climate reality we have literally never faced before.
It's a lot.
But what strikes me in the briefing is how people are actually responding to this pressure.
Oh, the cultural data.
Yeah, despite the global supply chain tensions, the grid stress, and all the climate warnings, the cultural data shows a deep, persistent human drive for connection and escapism.
The social indicators are remarkably robust.
Right.
The World Cup is completely dominating global sports and cultural conversations right now.
Everyone's watching.
The summer movie season is drawing massive crowds back to physical theaters.
Yeah.
Independence Day travel forecasts in the U.S. are exceptionally strong, indicating millions of people are willing to navigate those stressed transportation networks just to gather.
Wow.
And preparations are already well underway for America's 250th anniversary celebration.
Yeah, people are still living their lives.
Exactly.
When the macro-level systems are under intense, terrifying stress, human beings instinctively seek out community, entertainment, and, shared physical experiences.
We need it.
We don't just pause existence because the infrastructure is challenged. We find a way to celebrate, to watch the game, to take the road trip.
It really highlights a profound psychological resilience.
It does.
The macroeconomic data and the infrastructure limits, they dictate the boundaries of what is technically possible.
Right.
But it's the cultural drive that actually pushes society forward through the friction.
It is a delicate, incredible balancing act. Let's take a step back and look at the vast territory we've covered from this single day's snapshot.
We've covered a lot.
We started by looking at how the slow, deliberate work of diplomacy in the Middle East is easing the risk premium on oil, even as high treasury yields keep the cost of borrowing painfully tight for everyday businesses.
Then we examine the physical weight of the digital world, unpacking how the explosion of AI infrastructure is forcing utilities to scramble for baseload power.
Right.
and even sparking a renaissance in nuclear energy planning.
Then we looked at how AI is actively changing the speed of pharmaceutical development and software engineering, while simultaneously triggering legal battles over accountability and forcing a shift toward localized edge computing.
And finally, we confronted the ultimate paradox.
Yeah.
A civilization capable of plotting a course to Mars, yet profoundly vulnerable to the elemental forces straining our local power grids and food supplies.
Which leaves us with a final lingering thought. Something for you to mull over as you navigate both the physical and digital realities of your own day.
Right.
As AI becomes the ultimate hyperfast tool for solving incredibly complex problems, it simultaneously creates an unprecedented, massive drain on our physical power grids and natural resources.
It's the ultimate tug of war.
So what will break first?
That's the question.
Will the hard physical limits of our planet, the copper, the water, the grid capacity, throttle the AI revolution before it reaches its full potential? Or will AI be the very mechanism that invents the next-generation materials and fusion energy solutions we desperately need to survive our own progress? We are all caught right in the middle of that tug of war. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll catch you next time.